Pop-Tart, please. Hit the record button and she's all up on this stuff. Hello. Welcome. So first and foremost, if you haven't watched my last video about all the updates going on with McKamey Manor over the past year, definitely go watch that because what you're watching now is the extended interview that I had with the members of Horror Road Trip here on YouTube. That's Chris, Boston, and Brandon. I wasn't intending on publishing the whole thing because I guess I didn't think that the conversation would last as long as it did or spill as much tea as it did, or, I don't know. But at the end of it, I was like, hey guys, we've been talking for 2 hours and there's some really great stuff here. Like, I'm just gonna publish an extended interview. And they were like, yeah, go for it. So I think there's a lot of interesting stuff in here. You could look at this as some kind of McKamey Manor haters spill all the tea, tell all. So yeah, I'll keep this short and we'll just get right to the interview. Thank you for watching. And enjoy this conversation that I had with Horror Road Trip.
Okay, well, first of all, you guys can all say what's up. Tell us about yourself and what kind of content you guys make and like what your goal is with your content and stuff like that.
All right. Well, my name's Chris. I started Horror Road Trip back in 2020. The whole goal of Horror Road Trip was to highlight different immersive horror experiences out there to kind of steer people from McKamey Manor. So it was like everybody knew about McKamey Manor, but nobody knew about Blackout or about Crucible or any of that stuff. And so that was my goal. As that went on for a while, had some fun, but it became more and more work. I needed to take on a partner, and that's where Boston comes in. And Boston, why don't you talk about Haunted Road Trip a little bit?
We had only really known each other online. We hadn't, we'd become close friends, but hadn't met in person yet. And one day he was like, I think they want to go do like ghost hunting trip or something somewhere. And I know that sounds weird or whatever. And I was
No,
like,
it's not.
I've always wanted to do that, and there's so many haunted places in New England where I lived in Boston at the time, so let's do a road trip out here. And neither of us had ever done any kind of paranormal investigation. I think we were both like healthy skeptics,
Mm-hmm.
like we wanted to believe, but we were like, it would be fun if something happened, but it probably won't. We had a week. Yeah, shit happened.
Is this all on your YouTube channel?
Yeah.
I gotta go watch it now.
We
Damn.
went to some crazy places. We hit up Lizzie Borden's house, the Conjuring house.
Oh, yeah.
We stayed at the Colonial Inn. We broke into a national park.
You criminals.
Yeah, it was the bridge in Concord, Massachusetts, where like the shot heard around the world started with the Revolutionary War.
Oh, okay.
But literally everywhere that we went, things were happening. And it wasn't just with we barely knew how to use equipment and whatnot. It was just like stuff was happening to us that was kind of undeniable. So that's kind of where Haunted Road Trip started.
I didn't know you guys did that. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
If you guys are ever, I know I'm like on the other side of the country from you guys, but if you're ever in Arizona, we have a town called Jerome. That's
yeah.
Have you been there or you just know about it?
I've been there, but know about it, yeah.
You
Heard of it,
definitely
yeah.
need to, yeah, because it's like a really small town on the side of a mountain. It's like a artsy-fartsy town, but like one of the few hotels out there I know used to be like a hospital or something, and like it's very haunted-centric. I think the only restaurant out there is called like the Haunted Hamburger or something like that. So yeah, like something cute like that. I don't know. It's really cool. So like if you're ever out here, I know it's far, but like, yeah. Great things go on there.
Yeah, we need to get out west.
Yeah.
For sure.
Haunted and horror merged, and then we started the Hulu documentary, and that's where I met Brandon. Now, me and Brandon knew of each other for years.
I'm sure.
Never talked.
Right.
And it wasn't until we were on set, we hit it off, and Brandon joined the team, and now we got, basically Brandon's like the McKamey Manor road trip.
I love that.
Yeah. With
so
3
cool.
different road trips going at once.
Yeah, and so we kind of just all merge, and that's what we do. So we got content, anything horror related, we cover pretty much.
That's amazing. Yeah, I'm like super into paranormal stuff, so like that's cool that you guys do that. I love that.
Please, if you do go back and watch they were called what were they called?
Crossing Streams.
Crossing Streams. And we made like Ghostbuster avatars and like, but please don't judge us too harshly.
I would never.
No, judge them because they have yet to take me ghost tickling, and I want to go
That's
ghost
true.
tickling with
Ghost
them.
tickling? Oh, that's a cute way
Yeah.
to put it.
I desperately want to go, and like they told me about some of the equipment, and one of the pieces of equipment is a cat toy. So
Yeah. Okay. I feel like that sounds familiar. What cat toy are we talking about?
Cat balls, to be specific.
What is the significance of those? Because I've seen it before. I just can't remember.
Almost every paranormal investigator uses them. They're these little clear plastic balls with
Mhm.
like a mechanism in it that when it's moved or touched, it lights up. And it's a toy for
Oh.
cats. Some of the simplest things.
Yeah.
That one specifically, no one knows how it works, but supposedly it's like the energy can trigger whatever that mechanism is inside and make it light up.
So it doesn't even have to like actually move the ball. It
Mm-mm.
like, oh, that's crazy. Well, let's get into some McKamey Manor bullshit. So Ben gets the hard drive, starts releasing stuff. I know McKamey Manor Exposed released some stuff on their YouTube channel. Would you say that all of the relevant content that was worth watching has been released, or are we still missing things?
So I got the hard drive and gave it to Ben, right? So there's a lot of stuff on that hard drive. There's around 2 terabytes worth of stuff on that hard drive. The stuff that, yeah, there's a ton of stuff. There's a lot of stuff that was handed over to the, the people who kind of need it with all of Russ's legal stuff. But then there's so much more that's on there. Some of it's just disgusting. A lot of it's irrelevant, but it paints, if you look at everything as a whole, it paints a very clear picture of kind of who Russ is and what he does, and some of the fact that he has to take pictures of everything, and most of it's all about him. There's also a few, quote unquote tours that are on there. A lot of stuff that's never been released is on there, but there is a ton of stuff that I'm still finding out, right? Like there's like his entire location, everywhere he went for about 6 months is geotagged, right? So there's about, what was it? There's like 30 or 40,000 GPS coordinates to everywhere he went in 2017 for
Oh my God.
for the first 5 months. And so a lot of that stuff hasn't been released because unless you kind of put it in as a whole to paint that picture, it doesn't really make sense, right?
Okay.
And so that, and there's still a lot of stuff that we're kind of waiting on in order to release it so that,
Do you guys
so it
have
can be
plans to release more?
that's kind of up to all three of us.
Yeah. Okay. I mean,
Yeah.
no pressure.
I think just to like go on top of what Brandon said, I've seen very little of it as far as the stuff that like others haven't seen. But there's some stuff in there where it's like if you saw it, it does help, like you said, paint a picture of Russ's character and who he is. And it's not in a positive light, but it's also some stuff that's because of the other people involved and the victims, it's maybe too private to share. Unnecessary. Yeah. I do think that the things that were released with the victims' permission, I believe, Brandon, right? By Ben and Danny.
Yeah.
I think those were some of the biggest,
okay,
as far as how he treated contestants.
I think those were the most important clips at the time.
Was it like all you guys had hoped for as far as like what it exposed? Because I feel like from the public perspective, it was kind of just like, oh, that's it. But obviously there's a lot we didn't see. So I don't know. Were you guys like satisfied?
There's small things, and maybe to the public doesn't see it because they're watching like the big picture. And what happened to Rhett was serious. Rhett seriously got hurt, right? That was a big deal. But there was subtle little things in there that we've been trying to point out. The lack of safety measures, the lack of caring seen after that stuff was released. Russ re-releasing it, however, heavily edited and trying to show a narrative. And that alone spoke volumes because it showed what he was trying to hide to the general public.
You could see the way that he was manipulating things. It was like a clear example.
Well, for me, it also painted a very, like, there's always been a lot of questions around, like, hey, why did you go to Tennessee, right? And the hard drive kind of makes almost a daily chronicle from Transworld 2017 until he is fully moved and starting his first show in Tennessee. Like there's a day by day chronicle, and you get to see pictures almost daily of what happened during that time period. And I think that's kind of cool.
I can't imagine that Russ lives the most exciting life, though. Like, it's gotta be boring to look through most of it, right? Like,
The lot of him playing the victim.
Yeah.
wow.
Poor me.
I am so shocked.
There was one video that I will talk about, and it's at Russ's house after Carol leaves. And he's like, she took everything. And he opens the cupboard, and it's just stacked with like plates.
All the plates and everything, it's all gone. Yeah, everything's gone.
There's so much. No, there's so much stuff there.
That's the one that's on the McKamey Manor Exposed YouTube page, right? It's like 30 minutes long or something. Yeah, I was watching it, and he's just like, look, it's just gutted. And he like opens a closet, and there's like a ton of shit still in there. It's like, define everything, Russ. What?
Well, it's so funny you mentioned that particular video, because at one point in that video, he goes to a safe and he opens the safe, and there's a ton of stuff in that safe
Yes.
that I don't think any of us knew anything about. And it's like, Russ, what are on these videos and why are they in your safe? You know what I mean?
Yeah, tapes and hard drives.
Why are those particular ones in the safe? However, there was a bunch on the wall.
Speaking of hard drives, sorry, I have to be careful about what I say.
You're good.
But we can confirm he's got a shit ton of them and made sure to place them somewhere where he thought people wouldn't be able to find them, as far as the Attorney General investigation goes.
Like he physically took the hard drives and tried to hide them? Is that what you're saying?
As far as we know, allegedly, yes. It's like, why would you do that? You know, what's on all those hard drives?
Somebody has them.
Someone
has them? Yeah.
Yeah.
What evidence do you have for that?
Direct from a source evidence.
Okay.
Direct from a source that saw it happen.
Yes.
Okay.
We can say that much. As soon as I opened my mouth, I was like, how much can I say? And I was going to ask for clarification earlier when you were asking, was that everything that you had hoped for as far as like what was exposed? Were you talking specifically about what was on the hard drives that Ben and Danny released, or were you talking about the Hulu documentary?
Oh, I was talking about the hard drive that Ben and Danny released.
Okay.
Like, because I know it was kind of like fabled, you know, like it was just kind of like, is there a hard drive? Isn't there a hard drive? Who knows? So when you finally got your hands on it, it's like, was it all you had ever hoped for and more? Or like, yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's pretty juicy.
There are definitely some juicy parts, but you know, is there like 7 smoking guns on it? No. There's a lot of stuff that paints a clearer picture, at the very least for me, right? And I'm sure other people kind of feel the same.
Yeah. Anyone who's like close to the situation would probably find a lot more value in it. Yeah. Interesting.
I would say my like hope, like in a perfect world, what I would want on the hard drive that wasn't there, unfortunately, was more footage from San Diego, the San Diego tours, especially towards the end.
Yeah.
Doing the Rise and Fall series that we've been working on our channel, I've been able to go through all the videos that are public, of course, of the tours he had done and see them get progressively worse and worse. But there are some tours specifically that I wish we had some behind the scenes, because he documented like Brandon said.
I mean, that's what's on those other hard drives for sure. All that footage.
Yeah.
Which he won't let anyone get
somewhere.
And it's somewhere else now.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so you brought up Rhett's tour. So obviously he's the one who got dragged behind the truck and seriously injured. Chris, you also released a picture of Susan's ankle that you were saying that she also got dragged behind a truck. And that picture was kind of gnarly too. So what do you know about that situation? Like, were you there or what?
I was never there for any of the tours.
Okay.
But me and Susan were very close. Like, we were good friends and we talked all the time. I still occasionally talk to her. Russ, when he got a girlfriend, and I talk about this in the Hulu doc, when he gets a girlfriend, that's the highlight of the show. She's going through as many times as she can. And every time she goes in, it's going to get more and more intense for her. Well, in this particular moment, he was really trying to, he had her, she knew, you know, not all the stunts existed. So he was trying to show more with her because she was along for the game, basically. Same thing when I went through on my tour. I was kind of along on the lie.
Yeah.
And so he normally would have people hang on or wrap the chain around their wrist. But for some reason, he wanted to do it to her ankle. And this time he actually tied it to her ankle. It wasn't loose. It was tied on.
Right. Because Rhett was just
Well, it'd have to
hanging
be.
on, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
So
he
it's
was
like a
hanging on with
Chinese-
it wrapped around,
Think
but
of it
yeah.
like a Chinese finger trap, right?
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
It's on there loose, and as soon as that tension's on there, Rhett wasn't letting go.
Yeah. Yeah.
But for Susan, her legs were tied together, and she was being dragged behind the truck. Well, she started screaming because she was hitting rocks and stuff in the ground. I mean, she didn't go over a dirt road, but it got her good. And that's not why the live disappeared, because that was actually shown live in the Facebook group. The reason why that live was taken down was because at one point when she cried, she was holding the camera, she turned and showed the manor horn.
That's the zip line, right? The
Yeah.
rickety old piece of shit. Okay, yeah.
And so he removed the live for that reason. He didn't feel that what happened to her there was bad.
Yeah.
He was just
That's
mad
the
that
scary
people could see the manor horn.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Was she injured like outside just her ankle? Because there was only a picture of the ankle that I saw.
I just showed the ankle.
Yeah, I
However,
think-
her back was bruised up. It wasn't insane, but there was definitely markings from being dragged.
Because Rhett got fucked up. Like, so I can only imagine if she's being dragged by the ankle, she has less control than Rhett had.
And
Yeah.
one thing I want to point out about Rhett's video, and I've never really been able to talk about much on a live, if you hold up the pictures, because Russ tries saying in his video showing Rhett walking, look, his chest is fine. Well, if you hold up the picture of Rhett in the hospital and the picture of Rhett walking, those burns match exactly where the clothes are still on under him, the clothes that were stuck to his skin,
Yeah.
which is why they didn't tear off and they got infected and dirty from that nasty water he put
Yeah.
us.
I noticed that. Yeah, because like he has that whole like one side is just fucked, but then the rip is on the other side. I noticed that in the footage. Yeah. So obviously you got Rhett being dragged behind the truck. You got Susan. There were probably others, right?
I got dragged behind the truck.
You did?
Yeah, I did everything.
Were you hurt?
So I cheated, right? Russ didn't know. And when I showed up, I had sewn BMX padding into my onesie between the layers. Because I didn't trust the dude to not shoot me with paintballs and that. So he put me on the back of the truck and it was like surfing. I mean, it was fun. I will say in my time, so like when I was heavily involved from 2018 to 2020, nearly everybody that made it to the night portion did that.
Wow. Yeah, because like even the more like I say modern, he hasn't done a tour in like a year, but like the more modern ones are like during the day and they never make it to the night. Like I remember seeing that when I was like going through all of it before. I'm not in his group anymore. They finally kicked me out, but like yeah, I remember seeing a lot of that.
The thing that people don't always connect with when they start diving down the McKamey Manor rabbit hole, I feel like with Russ, he is obviously a master manipulator, but he really likes to test people, and he does it differently with people that he's friends with or in a relationship with, people that know him. I feel like he takes advantage of them more as far as like how can I push the limits.
Yeah, because shitty to you, Chris. I remember with the buried alive thing on your face. Yeah. That sticks with me, dude. Like that's fucked up.
Oh, it sticks with me too.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah, he still thinks about it. Like he
Yeah.
traumatizes the people that are closest to him in his life. He pushes them so far that he ends up traumatizing these people, and then is like, okay, well, I can get away with that with other contestants that come then because I pushed it this far with this person and I got away with it.
Okay, now I want to talk about like the whole exit interview thing, because obviously Russ was running around saying everyone in the Hulu doc was lying because I have the real interviews. Blah, 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 blah. Can you please elaborate on the reasons why your initial interviews don't align with what you were saying in the Hulu doc?
When he asked me to do my initial first interview, he sent me a list of questions for one. And the second thing is, he begged me to do it. At the time, he was saying that there was somebody named Scott Franks that was coming after him. And if I didn't do this quote unquote interview and answer these questions on camera and send to him, then, he was going to get in a ton of trouble. And at the time, I was his friend, right?
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was helping him out, right? I didn't realize that he would try to use that as ammo against me at some point, but essentially that's why. And so I answered all the questions and And that's kind of how that came to be. Chris can answer on his own, but I would imagine that anybody that's kind of come out against him and kind of seen the quote unquote light would say the same thing, right? Because here's the deal. I also defended him in a nationally syndicated magazine as well. I was his friend at the time.
Yeah. What about you, Chris?
I was drinking that Kool-Aid so much at that time. It was bad. I was mad about the being buried alive because that was one thing that I didn't want to do. I wasn't in a relationship with the guy, but like an abusive relationship, you start thinking, like, was it my fault? Well, I did show up. I did. I knew there was a chance, but I still went. And so while I was mad at him, I was more mad at myself, and I didn't know where I was with it. And he was like, we got a chance to do a real good one. You were the first one to do the Manor horn. You can make up this whole story. And I mean, if you listen to that thing, I talk about falling off the side of a mountain.
Yeah, yeah. But also, didn't you break the Manor horn at one point too? Yeah, I remember that.
I was the first one on it that jumped, and the only reason why I jumped was I knew what it was. It was a good trick on how he got you up there and to scare you, and most people didn't jump for that reason, but I knew what it was, so I just leaped right off, and I thought he was messing with me because I didn't land hard. It snapped. I didn't know it because I'm wearing headphones, I'm blindfolded. And he had told me that the middle area was full of snakes and a bunch of tall grass that I was going to go over. Well, I start going down this thing, and all of a sudden I'm coasting and I'm feeling tall grass, and I'm like, oh my God, a minute. He planned for me to land there. And so I start freaking out, thinking that I'm in with all these snakes, and he comes running up screaming, are you okay? Are you okay? Like freaking out. Come to find out, the pole at the end that I was supposed to go to wasn't enough weight, and it snapped in half, and basically it just dropped me the 30 feet.
Just like lost all the tension, and you just
Yep.
Wow. But even though you knew like what the Manor horn was, you still thought there'd be snakes there, even though you knew?
So I mean, remember, we're outside, and he did have an open field, and so in my head, I'm a city guy. I don't go out into the country, and I see a bunch of tall grass. I assume there's nothing but poisonous snakes in that tall grass. I'm not going in it.
Hearing the stories that Chris has told me about his friendship at the time with Russ, like when he was doing these tours and stuff, one of these two said it in the Hulu documentary. I don't remember which one. But if you're going to be in his life as a friend or a mod or whatever, the haunt doesn't really ever end. The manipulation, the smoke and mirrors, as he calls it, which is really just lying, it never ends. And I feel like he did that a lot from the stories I've heard from Chris with just little things, to get in his head about stuff. And then you're like, is this part of the tour that's going to be coming up?
Even if so like even if you're not like actively on a tour, he's still like being manipulative, and that's wild, dude. I mean, I'll give it to Russ. Like, I'm sure he very clearly is good at manipulating people, and like this is something I wanted to ask Shay, but like she never got back to me, so I don't really know if it's fine. But I wanted to ask her, like, what is it that like Russ clearly manipulates like really attractive young women, and when I look at Russ, like, what? Like, I wouldn't go near that dude with a 1,000-foot pole. I don't want to be near that person. So it's always shocking to me when you see like this beautiful woman like Holly, or even just young people like Shay, everyone in between. I'm like, how do you keep doing this? Like, what is it about Russ that manipulates people into being that like committed to him?
I can't answer for Shay, but from everything that I've seen, again, just patterns of what happened with the exes and then being in a close friendship ourselves with Shay, I think a lot of it is he makes people feel like they are the most important person in the world. They are the star of the show. And everything that comes out of his mouth, and it's funny because you see in some of these Facebook groups, the ex is saying like, you think that's a special song? That's the song you sing to me. He, as far as I know, has told all of them at different points he was going to go take them to Las Vegas and get married. It's always fast and deep, and instantly we're in love and I can't live without you. And I think that he does it with people that he can kind of see need that.
You don't think any of those feelings are like legitimate on Russ's end? I don't think he's capable of like actually feeling the things that you're describing.
Yeah. No, he needs someone to make him feel important and loved, and he knows how to get that by saying the right things. Again, this is all just my opinion based on what I've seen and heard about from his past relationships. Because you can manipulate somebody with love. You can do it in a very loving way. And then suddenly that manipulation starts turning into things that are not very loving.
That's a pattern of behavior with Russ for sure. But sorry, that was like off topic. I was just like, I'm always thinking that. I'm like, how in the fuck, dude?
Yeah.
Like, I don't get it. I don't get it. But like, then again, I've never talked to him, and you guys know him. I don't know him, but like, it's just, I don't know
him. I just want to say that I've met him once.
You flipped him off, didn't you?
And I flipped him the bird and smiled while he was taking a picture with this couple. And so like the camera someone was taking taking the picture, and it was him, he's super tall, and this couple, and I walked by and just flipped him the bird and grinned, and
I love that.
Was very proud of myself.
All right. Thank you, sir. I got it all? Enjoy the show, man. All right, you take care, you guys. I just had somebody flip me off when I was getting that picture.
I was so happy.
That's the only interaction you ever need to have with that dude. Like,
right. But there was so much I wanted to say. He's hurt people I care about. He's hurt my friends. There was so much that I wanted to say, and in that moment, like that's all I could do. We made eye contact, but I can tell you, seeing him in person, because I've always had the same thought. I'm like, what's the attraction? But yeah, no, he looks and seems just as gross, in my opinion, in real life as he does on camera.
Yeah.
It was funny watching people at the convention give him looks too, because it was a lot of smiling and like, nice to see you. And then he'd like walk by with the camera and they'd be like,
really? That's crazy.
Yes. Yeah.
So in our time when me and Brandon were following him, Russ claims that we put people up to like say stuff rude to him. We did not. None of that was planned. That happened on its own, and we just loved it and thought it was hilarious. But there was quite a few people that, like Boston said, would smile, and then as soon as his back was past him, would either flick him off or give him a dirty look. And then there was other people that just came up to him and told him what a piece of crap he was.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Good for them. Good for them. Yeah, but see, like he's got this thing that like I feel like he's very widely unliked or disliked, I guess, and people show it to him all the time, and he's just like unwilling to accept that it's him. It's not you guys. It's not what you guys are saying. It's not what anyone's saying. It's clearly him.
And he's got this big story where he tries to make himself out like all these people, they hate me because they think I'm doing these horrible things, but I'm not, guys. It's all smoke and mirrors. And my Russ McKamey act, when you're doing the tour, I'm such a nice guy. I'm such a good guy. And it's all a lie.
Yeah.
And I think as far as like the infamy goes, that's the problem here. That's the double-edged sword, because he loves the people coming up for pictures, even if the people coming up for pictures are doing it to show their friends later and like, look, I took a picture with this douche, you know? It's not people that necessarily admire him.
Yeah. He doesn't recognize that, though. I think he's too full of himself. Yeah. Moving on to the fire code situation. Chris, how did you find out about it? Because obviously you're Russ's friend.
I mean, 2019, Russ did an interview he thought it was just some random like kid in college doing an internship. He didn't know where it was. He didn't know this guy worked for Fox News, and it went viral. Things like went off the hook. I remember waking up one morning and we're on every radio station. We're on every Good Morning show. The news is talking about us.
Was this in San Diego or in Tennessee?
No, this is in Tennessee.
Tennessee. Okay.
2019. I'm one foot out the door, ready to leave, and all of a sudden things go off the hook. And he's like, I'm coming to Michigan, man. I need to get away for a while. So he comes up to Michigan and hangs out. And in the process, that's when things started being brought to light for like the first time in a long time to the masses, right?
Mhm.
Things aren't right. And somebody called the city about possible zoning issues. The Manor horn was one of the biggest issues because if he had taken any money for that, that is considered an amusement park ride. And so the amusement park commission got into it, and Russ was like, well, you know, everything's donations. It's not that. And talked his way out of that one. But where they got him was the barn. The barn, because he said he had props in there, he had sets in there. They said this isn't up to code. There's extension cords laying in puddles. There is no fire exit signs. There's no sprinkler system. You know, there was all different fire zone issues.
Yeah.
And you're like chaining people and putting them in cages and stuff.
And not to mention, you want to talk about if a match went up in that barn, it is inside that barn is lined with all the onesies.
Yes. Yes.
It is the creepiest serial killer type thing you will ever walk into in your life.
Yeah.
It must smell so bad.
Oh, it does. It
Ew,
does.
why?
Because
Think
those
about-
sweat, they're not washed. They're just nailed.
Wet and
Oh,
water
okay.
and mildew.
I guess I would just think that like that would all evaporate and everything would just smell like dirt after a while. But no,
No,
the
no.
stench just like
I peed in mine twice. I'm just saying.
People have been forced to puke and like
Yeah.
eat each other's puke. Like there's
It's
nasty
awful.
stuff that goes on.
You got all those up there. So, you know, me, him, and Susan are the only people really talking to him at this point in time. And he's like, what do we do? What do we do? And found out, because he couldn't afford to get these things taken care of.
Of
he
course.
just said, everything's moved out of the barn and nobody will ever be in the barn again.
Problem solved.
Fine, right? And
Yeah.
they said, absolutely. As long as there is never anyone seen in this barn again, then you're good to go. He had to have people come out and inspect to see that all the equipment was taken out of the barn, which it was. It was taken out and put into those storage containers there on the
Yeah.
property,
Mhm.
which those you don't need fire coating for. What a lot of people don't know, a lot of haunted houses, walk-through haunted houses that you go through are those.
yeah, that makes sense.
And that's how you get around the sprinkler codes and all that, because you can close them off and contain the fire.
So they do that on purpose with the storage
Yes.
containers. Oh.
So he moved the stuff in there, which why not just leave it in there? I don't get it. And
Yeah.
That's true.
we thought, okay, well, it's in there. It's, you know, and I had always figured, okay, it's always like that. But I know about this, and I stay quiet with it for years. And Ben does his series. I see Ben go through it. None of it clicks with me. We had just gotten back from LA, and Cecil calls me up, and he was like, Chris, Ben's podcast about that not being able to use the barn, I've only been in the barn every time. And I was like, what? He was like, yeah, Ben was in the barn. So call up Ben, and right away we hop on the computer, we're watching his footage, and sure as shit, I see the onesies on the wall. And I was like, we got to go frame by frame. And we did. And
Yeah.
Ben, I mean, it was a perfect ending for Ben's video because it went so full circle.
Yeah.
That was planned.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the very first episode, when Ben kicks Russ and he falls back and you see that top of the barn, it was like, holy cow. But we, you know, there's more footage than I think what Ben showed. We actually have them walk out, and Cecil's talking about Mentos or something.
Yeah.
And he
The
has
battery died.
he has the camera down, but you see him walk out of the barn.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it was like, holy shit, we got him.
What I found too, is that so there's on McKamey Manor Exposed, one of the videos, it's like 20 seconds long, but it's Holly and that guy who was fucking around with Marissa in that mall tour, that cringy guy. They're like building shit in the barn or whatever, and it's interesting because the boards on the barn are horizontal. And normally, like, you would think, like, when you build, like, a structure with wood, usually they're, like, vertical. But those are, like, and you can clearly see it very, very clearly in that little clip that was from the hard drive, just the horizontal ones. And then if you go back to Ben's, you can see the wall, that same wall with the horizontal planks. Up until that point, you were under the assumption that he was just running like the morgue out of a storage container instead of the barn.
It's where we moved it.
Yeah. So you just thought he had stayed there.
The morgue was actually outside, because all the morgue is two, Brandon, was the type of wall I'm thinking of. It's like a plastic facade, right?
Facade, yeah.
And it's just a corner.
Oh, it's outside though?
Yeah, so it's outside, just a corner, and Russ just doesn't show the floor or the sky, and has a chair there, and it looks like you're in a building.
I always just assumed it was the barn. Like, even before all of this fire code stuff came out, like, I guess I always assumed.
I don't think Chris, when he started using the barn again after you guys fell out.
It must be because, like, you've got this big giant barn on your property. You got to use it for something. You know, I don't know. I just, like, that's the only thing that makes sense, because it seems like it'd be a perfect place to do stuff like that. So maybe Russ was just too stubborn to give it up.
He could have updated it.
I mean, he does have neighbors.
Yeah.
He does have neighbors. And at what point are they going to start filming him holding people underwater in that? He needs to be in the barn where they can't see what's going on. Because if there's an accident, how do you cover it up?
True.
Well, I wonder if that's why he put those Connex boxes in kind of a square back there with right in the middle.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But he could have also used those Connex boxes for a number of things, and he never did. Like it's almost like he used that barn out of spite after being told he couldn't use it anymore. You know what I mean?
Tell Russ what to do.
Exactly.
This is the way I look at the entire thing, from San Diego to Tennessee, everything in between. The haunt, which started out as like a passion and, getting all these props and really getting into trying to scare people and find their fears, turned into something that was more like a drug for him. And it became a him thing.
Yeah.
And so as long as he's getting that feeling he needs, he doesn't need all that extra stuff. So by the time we get to where we are today, it's how can I do this in the most slimmed down possible version to get
his rocks off, essentially.
Yeah. I was like, I don't know if I want to say it that way, but yeah. I mean, it is that way, in my opinion.
You can definitely tell when you're going through the timeline of stuff with Russ, because, like, I do remember, like, even thinking that, even like back in San Diego when it was just him and having the kids go through and stuff, it's like, this is a really cool, like, little thing he's got going on here. But to see what it's turned into, and like, it was just year after year, he would make videos and be like, oh, this year we're gonna do this, it's gonna be bigger and better this year. And every single year, like you were saying earlier, he has to constantly one up himself. And then it just turned into nasty freezer water and throw up onesies on a wall.
What was happening was he was one-upping himself verbally, right? And saying this is all as he was downsizing the actual physical things inside the haunt. The less props and less this and less actors, and now it's just me and a host,
Yeah.
But verbally, it's the biggest. Didn't
the
you
world's
say
longest zip line?
Yeah, the world's longest zip line. What's the underground, an Olympic-sized pool underground?
Yeah, it was underground Olympic-sized pool.
With alligators.
Rat race was
Ralphie.
Baseball, or 2 football fields.
What? He said that? About that stupid cage? If you don't know all that stuff that's going on, you just kind of take his word for it. Because, like, when I first found McKamey Manor, it was like 5 years ago or something. And I, out of curiosity, joined the Facebook group. And I was just like, oh, okay, like, this is what these people are doing, I guess. That's it. Like, Russ says that. You just take him at his word, I guess, until all this stuff kind of starts coming out. It's like, oh, so there isn't, you don't have alligators,
When he dives down into that well of hyperbolic bullshit, that's when you start, it starts crossing the line between entertainment and you start getting into just plain fraud, right? And that's what that's kind of essentially what it's kind of turned into, and that's one of the main reasons why I kind of came out, because I felt like I was scammed, right? Yeah. And a lot of people feel the exact same way, right? Like, kind of like what you said, when he was in San Diego, a lot of people are attracted to that. When he moved to Tennessee, I went to Tennessee thinking I was going to get San Diego.
Mhm.
Right. And he's saying, oh, it's free. Da, 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 da. There's nothing fucking free about this shit. As the contestant, you're buying half the shit that he's going to use, but you don't get to take it back with you. That's his, right?
Yeah, like the paint and all that shit, the onesie, yeah.
Exactly. And then him saying, and then there's this, this altruistic, nice Russ, give me a bag of dog food. I'll give it to some dog thing. None of it goes to a fucking dog thing. You know what I'm saying? They're gonna put it into a barrel and you're gonna carry it around on your back as part of weights, right?
And then he'll
he's
feed
gonna
it
go to his dogs. Which,
yeah.
That's fine. I mean, I'm glad his dogs are being fed, but
Well, remember when I went through, he had no dogs.
Really?
Yeah, there was no dogs on it. There was 0 dogs on his property whenever I was there. That fence that surrounds it where the dogs are at now, that did not exist.
Whoa.
Because that's where I did that's where I did my first show, is where the dog kennel is at now. Right.
Does he have like 5 dogs or something now? Something crazy?
Yes. Oh, I don't know, Chris, you've seen the dogs. I've never seen them.
I guess it doesn't matter how many dogs Russ has, but
it's a lot.
He
It's
has
a lot of
them.
dogs.
Yeah.
He does.
There was more at one point.
Yeah. Well, I know him and Carol had like 8 or something.
Well, yeah, and the whole like the Greyhound rescue, like that was all Carol, and he just kept running with it. Like, but I don't think it was ever him that truly cared. And on all accounts, I've heard that he treats the dogs really well for the most part.
Yeah.
So that's nice to know.
Yeah.
I think that they keep him company, I would assume. I'm sure he lives a pretty lonely life. And I think that's part of the reason why he recycles people and pulls people in and makes people feel special. It's the same pattern that's been going on. And we're only, I mean, as far as the Rise and Fall series goes, we've been talking a lot about where do we go from here? Because we're at the end of the California days. We're going to talk about Tennessee. And that's a harder thing to kind of go through, because that's when you see the change where it's like not about the haunt at all. It's about the people.
Yeah.
But in the San Diego days, you see the same exact things. The same exact words. What were some of them, Chris? Like that he would say in the haunt to people.
He didn't do anything yet. It hasn't started.
Yeah.
Right. It hasn't even started. Like you see some of that stuff back with kids.
If you go with five more minutes, you'll be in the real manor. Like that.
Right.
Yeah.
You start seeing that stuff, and it's the same manipulation. And I think that the real story is, and that's what I liked about the Hulu documentary specifically. I think the real story here is not so much about the manor and the evolution of the manor. It's about the evolution of a man.
Yes.
Or de-evolution of a man.
Yeah.
Who found something that he can't live without. And it's not scaring people and giving people that thrill. It's for him.
Well, because when he was still in California, he at least, I know his son stopped talking to him or whatever, but like he still had Lindsay. And she was younger at that point, right? Because I remember seeing her on one of it was like the Travel Channel thing that they did when she was like little. Yeah. So, I mean, and he obviously had Carol, and he was more stable then. It's like what you were saying earlier is like he must live such a lonely life, because like I can't imagine Lindsay's talking to him. I know she wasn't when she made that Surviving Life interview. I can't imagine she's gone back to talking to him or anything. Like it's almost sad, but it's like it's self-inflicted. Like Russ did it all to himself.
So I think the stuff on Travel Channel and that we saw was what he wanted us to see. After talking to people that were there in that time frame, it seemed like all the red flags that we see now, just the masses are seeing them. They saw them though. They've
always been there.
Wow.
He's always had the impulses. He's always had the manipulation tactics.
I believe, sadly, Lindsay, right? Said when she was like 7 or 8 years old, had to witness him
trying to unalive himself. Yeah.
Or at least acting like he was going to. Yeah.
Yeah. But I do also remember her saying in that interview that she had, like, he would make her go through the manor as like a young kid to toughen her up, and it's just like, that's a child, dude. Like, what the fuck are you doing, dude? Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. And the dude's got a lot of trauma, but it's like, it's not an excuse. Well, what he does to people is inexcusable, but yeah. We got a little off track there because I was still have a few questions about the fire code.
Oh yeah, the fire
America. So you don't know who like reported it initially. It's just someone who saw it on Fox.
Yeah.
Did he react a certain way to you? Like, how long had he known about it until he told you?
It happened quick. Like,
Yeah.
I knew about it probably about 5 minutes after it happened.
Oh, okay. Was he like really upset?
So he got a letter. I think it was probably 48 hours before they actually came out. It just said, we're with the city. We need to come and check out a few things. It didn't really go into details. And then when he said they got there was a bunch of them, a lot more than what he thought there was going to be. And they walked through and were writing everything down and taking a lot of notes. And then, that ended and he's like, I don't know, man. I think I'm going to jail. So this is it. I might as well just off myself, and just going through.
That's always it.
And I'm like, dude, just calm down. You don't know what they're going to do. And then they came back with basically a form with all the coding violations, which I think
you sent it to me. Yeah.
His responses to forms, I just love.
Just any form.
I've seen his response to many different forms, and I just love whenever I see him because I don't think I could try to fill out a form as bad as he is successful at. Like
that is so funny.
It was probably something like the barn is fine because everybody in there knows that it's smoke and mirrors, but not real smoke because there's no fire, so I don't have to do anything.
No. So all it said was, no matter what the item was on, because some are like exit signs, not particularly just about fire itself or safety. It just said all items moved to Connex trailers. Nobody will ever be in here. And then it was just copied and pasted as the response for every single action.
And they just took it. They're just like, okay.
Well, this is good. It's really good stuff.
And then they just never followed up with him ever again. No. Until obviously other shit. I can only imagine Russ freaking out over something like that. Like, that's why I had to ask you, because I'm like, there's no way that this went over well.
No, he was stressed. It was over. He was ready to call it in.
Can you imagine? Don't you just want to be a fly on the wall from when he got that letter from the Attorney General?
Oh yeah.
If that's how he reacted to a fire code violation back in 2019.
Well, I mean, we saw how he reacted to the Hulu documentary. He did so many unhinged hour and a half long lives, just being like, they're all idiots and they're just making me more famous and blah blah blah. Okay, Russ, the dude's delusional. I think that's pretty obvious at this point. So when you guys found out about the Tennessee Attorney General investigation, how did that go over with you guys? Was there any part of you that was disappointed that after everything that you have been doing and trying to get out there, that it took an entire Hulu documentary to get someone to actually give a shit? Or were you just I'll take what I can get?
I'd like to answer this one first and then I'll pass it to Brandon.
Sure.
For me, when I left McKamey Manor, I never wanted to talk about McKamey Manor. That was the whole purpose of my thing, was talk about everything but McKamey Manor. So I never outed Russ in that. It wasn't until I was approached by Hulu for the documentary that I saw the potential. I was very standoffish about signing on. It took a long time for me to sign on to it. And when I saw the potential and I knew who was involved, I was like, wow, this is the first time this could go mainstream, because I've seen it throughout the years. I've seen the truthers groups. I've seen, exposed out there, and they're not getting anywhere. They're not getting the traction.
Right.
Ben had not entered the picture at this point.
Right.
And so I was like, this Hulu doc could be our one shot. And I remember telling Boston, if I sign up for this, we're all in on it, because this is going to be the time that hopefully it will get somebody's attention. And so I did not think in a million years that it would have gotten the Attorney General's attention. I thought it would just bring awareness. I was over the moon to see that happened.
That's so great. I'm glad.
I remember when I first got that message that, hey, look at this, right? I was coming home from work. And I remember I was like, hold on. And I started reading it, and I almost pulled I almost stopped my vehicle kind of right where it was. And I was like, you guys got to see this. Holy shit. Something's actually happening. Kind of like what Chris said, right?
Yeah.
For me, I guess it's all about accountability. I don't know what form or or what factor that takes its shape in. But like I just wanted to see some sort of accountability, right? And it looks like that might actually be happening. And, you know, as things have been played out, it looks like it very well could be happening, right? So I was over the moon, right? Like that's all I could think about at the time.
That's good. I'm glad. I'm glad to hear you guys
Yeah.
say that, because like I wasn't so sure, because like I feel like so many people have put so much energy into this that it can be like a little frustrating to be like, how come no one's fucking listening to me? But clearly it worked out. So yeah, that's good. I'm glad you guys are chill about it. What about you, boss, then?
Yeah, I was also thrilled when it came out. I think like the difference with Chris and Brandon is that, like you said, for all these years there had been those groups and people trying to, like, you know, expose and nobody do this stuff, whereas these two, you know, that was a part of their life that they just kind of left behind, you know.
Yeah.
But holding on to the knowledge that, like, hey, if I could ever actually get the word out there in a larger platform where it could maybe actually make a difference, I'm going to do it. And yeah, like Chris had reservations about doing the documentary. When he made that decision, he sure as hell said, we're all in. I'm doing, you know, the documentary is going to be coming out and like, we're doing this. Let's expose and take down the manor. And so we just kind of hit the pedal to the metal, and seeing that something actually happened because of it was awesome. Now, where we are today, almost a year later, personally, I'm starting to get frustrated.
Right.
I'm at that point, you know, but I think for these two, like they weren't involved as heavily for all those years of like trying to expose in these different Facebook groups and stuff, you know?
Right. Yeah, I guess you just take what you can get when it's just been like slim pickings for so long, and it's like finally at least someone knows about it. So that, I guess, brings me to Shay. How did you guys come in contact with her for the first time? Because it's kind of a weird little relationship y'all got going on there.
You know, we went to Trans World like we do every year.
Mhm.
And this time, you know, me and Chris decided to kind of team up and go together. And, you know, we were there for 2 days, and then Mr. Sunshine showed up, and in tow was this female, which at that point, I don't think me or Chris ever, you know, saw before. Right. And we kind of realized, and just naturally, that, you know, we wanted to confront Russ, especially after everything that he was saying, and because he was specifically calling us out to come up to him that day on his live.
Yeah.
Well, naturally, we don't want to involve people that don't need to be involved and that are not publicly out there. So we made a point to kind of give her her space, give her her privacy, and not bother her. Right. And so that's kind of where we, you know, quote unquote, met her, but we didn't actually have a conversation with her. I think Chris might have said sorry to her. I think I said sorry to her a couple times if I got too close, or, you know, if I was in her way or anything like that. Like we were very cognizant of the fact that she was there, and very cognizant of the fact that we need to not look like we're, you know, attacking her in any possible way. And I think that resonated with her to a degree.
You just saw her there with Russ, and you're like, oh shit, he's got a new one.
We didn't know.
We didn't know. Yeah.
So when Russ is at Trans World, a lot of people just follow him. We didn't know if that she was just somebody that was randomly following him. We knew he was there with someone, and we thought maybe she was that person.
A friend of that person. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Right. So we had not connected those dots at all, and it wasn't until a handful of days later she made a comment on one of our lives, and we're like, oh shit, this is that girl. We called her up and we're like, do you know what's going on? You know, you contacted us, and did she want to do the Zoom meeting, Brandon, or was it just like this is an easier ground for us to all talk?
Once she reached out to us on Facebook, I asked her, I was like, if you're up for it, let's have a civil conversation, right? Like I kind of, you know, dig into kind of how you feel this specific way. And so that's exactly what we did, is we set it up on Zoom, and we just had a I mean, I thought it was, and I think she did too. And I know Chris thought it was a very civil kind of like interview, right? And it wasn't hard hitting. It wasn't confrontational in any manner. And again, I think that resonated with her as well, right? Like we weren't attacking her, right? We weren't attacking her feelings or anything along those lines. You know, she might have gotten a different impression of us than what Russ was telling people about us.
Go figure.
You know? So,
And I want to make a point because I don't know if everyone knows this, because they might be like, oh, why would she comments and now you want to do a Zoom call with her? It's kind of a part of the McKamey Manor road trip that, you know, if somebody is about to go through the haunt or showing interest or going through the interview process, different people from the team will reach out and offer a different perspective and say, hey, do you know what you're getting yourself into? You know, as an attempt to stop. I mean, the whole thing is no more victims, you know, so I think that was already kind of something you guys had been used to doing. And now you see somebody who is maybe either a new contestant or a new part of his life, and she's reached out to you and, hey, we should all talk. If you want to know why we've got a problem with your friend here, you know, we'll let you know. I think it was a natural evolution of why you guys started talking in the first place.
So her intention was more to kind of defend Russ to you guys, or just kind of get information?
I think it was because it wasn't an information grab from what I gathered. It was more of like, this is our perspective. She gave her perspective, and granted, her perspective was more on the Russ McKamey defense, while ours was, were you aware of this, right? Were you aware of that? A perfect example of that is it was brought up at one point about something that Russ was saying about a friend of mine, about something that he knew was incorrect, right? But he was still saying it anyways. And she knew about this. Russ had told her about this because he's often mentioned in one of Russ's attacks. And I told her, was like, look, he knows that it's not true and I can prove it. And I was able to prove that to her. I think that might have been a little enlightening for her, right? Because she asked to see the actual screenshot. It's, you know, shedding light on and kind of poking holes in his overall manipulative narrative that he likes to go with, you know?
She's truly the kind of person who likes to see the good in everybody.
Yeah.
Even the monsters.
She seems sweet.
She's very sweet. And that what started as just like a, hey, you know, we're presenting our side while we've got a problem with them, and she is presenting her side, I turned into like they had a group chat created, and it turned into, you know, he's my boyfriend.
So she reached out to you guys before she started dating Russ?
They were technically dating, but they weren't living together.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Date one was Trans World.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. And then I had reached out to her at some point because I knew that they were obviously, you know, at this point they were like, I think we're maybe becoming friends with her. Like everyone was cautious because like we also know she could just be trying to talk to us to feed information, like get information on us and give stuff to us, you know. So everyone was cautious, but everyone was kind. And then when I found out that like she might be moving there, I reached out and introduced myself and, you know, hey, I saw you at Trans World. You know, my friends have been talking to you. I'm sure they've mentioned me. And I felt like maybe she just maybe it would be good to speak with a female.
Yeah.
And kind of really talk to her about what I knew about his ex's experiences that hadn't been put out there publicly and everything. And it was hard. It was hard watching somebody about to walk into fire, but it happened. Right. And then that kind of turned into just a casual friendship between all four of us, where it was mostly her reaching out or mentioning something when she felt uncomfortable or scared.
Okay.
In my opinion.
Yeah.
I can't speak for Brandon or Chris, but I felt like it was usually, I need someone to know about this kind of a situation.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, let's not be mistaken though. At the very beginning, and Boston talked about being cautious about possibly trying to gather information, and she 100% was at the beginning, because there's a couple things that she said, but that very quickly dissipated, right? Mm-hmm. That dissipated really quick, and that's when, like Boston said, you know, she started mentioning a few things, and those things became more and more and more as their relationship grew, and she moved into Tennessee. Right. And, you know, that's when things started getting wild.
Yeah. So obviously, I'm going to go into it in the video, but if you're comfortable, would you be able to kind of recap what happened on the night that you ended up calling the police for her?
Yeah. So, and keep in mind, this was the end of what, about 3 months, guys?
Yeah, it was about 3 months of us where we've called the cops because we were getting things that were scary.
So you had called the cops previously to the night.
Right.
How many times did you call the police before he finally got arrested?
Brandon, why don't you do the first few and then...
The first view? Oh my God.
There was only a few. It was
Yeah.
only
Okay.
Yeah, like I think there were a total of 4, but we only did 3, and Shay herself did 1. I think but I was the first one to call, and the reason why I called is because I saw on Snapchat, because again, by this point we, the pretense of trying to get information, that whole thing was over, and the real friendship was starting to bloom. And so, I became friends with her on Snapchat. And so she would post stuff on Snapchat. And I noticed one time, and it was late at night, not super late, but late for me because I'm an old man. She had bruises on her arms and all over her legs. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, this is bullshit. And so I immediately called Boston, the 3 of us were in a group chat, and I was like, we got to do something. And so I decided, like, let's call the non-emergency number to try to get, somebody to go out there and check. That's what I did. Is I called the non-emergency number and was like, look, this is what's going on. We're concerned about our friend. She's got bruises on her arms and all down her legs, and she just moved into a guy who's abusive. Well,
and keep in mind too that you guys had gone from talking to her like every day to her moving in and being like, I'm gonna have to give you an emoji or something to tell you when not to talk to me and like don't contact me. So you went through a separation period where you're not hearing from her. None of us are hearing from her, and now there's pictures being posted. And for me, when I saw those pictures, I thought, is she calling out for help? Like, she knows we're watching, right? She knows we have her back. Is this a call for help?
You're talking about the Snapchats of her having bruises and stuff?
Yeah. And so I called, and when the first time that I called, they didn't go out, right? They were like, we need that person to call. And we're like, well, at least maybe it's recorded at this point. At least we tried.
Sure, yeah.
You know what I mean? So that was the first time. The second time, and I'm going to rely on Boston and Chris to help, keep me straight on the exact timeline, because it kind of gets, it happens pretty quick. But the second time, I want to say maybe this was a month or 2 later, she was sending us pictures of bruises. And again, we're like, this is fucking bullshit. I'm going to call again. Right?
Yeah, that was the third time. So the second time was her making a call to the cops, because Brandon had found out when he made the first call for the welfare check from the Snapchat photos. We were all kind of shocked, disappointed that, like, what do you mean that the person were worried? Like, that's what a welfare check's for.
Exactly, right?
It's a welfare check. But they did tell Brandon, pass along to your friend that you can text 911 in the state of Tennessee. Oh. And so we had, the communication with her would open up for pockets of time. So after that, she got back in communication with us, again, sending us worrisome things. And at one point, her and Russ would break up all the time. And at one point they had broken up. She had found out he was with somebody else. And she was like, I'm done. I'm leaving. And he started threatening to unalive himself and being very mentally abusive, in my opinion, the stuff that she would send us and tell us. And so Brandon told her about the 911 option if she was afraid for him, her life, or his. And she texted, and they came and they left. She told them, but Russ said, no, I'm fine. And they left. And it's like, okay, nothing you can do. So that was the second time that the police were involved. And that was Shay who made that contact.
And so now at this point on lives, because she's going live more than she's talking, and Russ is also going live, and he's not leaving her side at this point.
Yeah.
And she came up with tells for us. So if he would say something, or she would say something that was a lie, or if she didn't feel safe, she would tap her nose. And so we would ask something in chat that would be, if he looked at the phone, it would be taken one way, like we're just making fun of Russ, but it was basically saying, are you in a dangerous place? And she'd do that. And so now we're like, okay, so she's giving us the signals. Things are getting bad. Brandon described the third phone call.
Yeah, this is the third.
Yeah.
Coming up now.
And this time, like I wanted to make sure that the police officer had like the full context, right? And so, you know, I decided I not only did I call, but I also sent a message to the sheriff's department on Facebook and also the DA of Lawrence County. I sent them a message as well. And finally the cop decided that she would go, but it wasn't after I emailed her. I had to email her almost our entire conversation, right? All the screenshots I sent her as an email. She read them through, and that's what got her to go out there.
Wow.
And so, yeah, they were there for like an hour, and then the cop called me back, and she was like, unfortunately, they couldn't do anything at that time. You know,
Right.
which really sucks, because it sounds like the female cop that I spoke to was really kind of on our side, and then it almost seemed like to me that she was looking for a reason, but you know, it's very difficult when that's your whole world to then, you know what I'm saying?
But they're
And
both
so-
also adults. Like, you can't like force.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was a big issue because at this point we're all in a group chat. You know, this is getting close to the end and we're talking on a regular basis, and every single day it's something happened that she's uncomfortable with or didn't consent to, or she's afraid of this, or she doesn't want to say that, or we're getting recordings sent to us of him yelling at her and screaming at her about stuff. And, you know, I'm in the bedroom, the door's locked. It was escalating. And something with that third phone call that really bothered me, it was, at least as far as we know, they weren't separated.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you would at least, make sure that
and-
she's put up somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, and I want people for everything that we were hearing and witnessing, of course, from afar. This is all just coming from her, but everything that we were hearing, in my opinion, I'm sure the boys feel the same. We were witnessing a very abusive relationship. Not necessarily, you know, physically, but extremely manipulative and terrifying for her to be in this situation. But it was also her loving him. She had like extreme feelings for him. She knew there was really big problems. She wanted to get him help. She was convinced that she would be the person after 65 years that could help him. And listen, that is admirable.
That's also very common with abuse victims, though. That's why they stay a lot of times. Yeah.
Yes. So it shows that she's an amazing soul, but it also shows that she is in this cycle, unfortunately, of two things. She also would say, I can't leave because he's going to do the things he's done to me to other people. And then it would be a lot of like, well, what has he done to you? You know, and
Right.
that's essentially what the last 2 months of their relationship was like. And then the last time, the night before, and like Chris had said, she was doing a lot of lives and he was doing a lot of lives. And she would send us messages saying, Russ is making me go live, like right after they had a huge fight, and telling her what to say. He'd be like, we need to pretend like that last live was a joke, because they would fight in their lives.
Yeah.
He was so like rude to her, and let's show everyone how much we love each other now. So like he'd make her go live and like sit on his lap and like say things, and then the whole time we'd be seeing these. And so people were, you know, there were some people that have commented like, well, we saw you commenting in her live and like that just instigated Russ and put her in a dangerous situation. Think of how we felt when we couldn't communicate with her.
Yeah.
And we see what's happening. She's telling us that he's making her go live. At the time, I wasn't thinking about the fact that he could lean over and maybe read the thing. I wanted everyone in that live and her to know, we have your back. This man is openly, almost at this point, abusing you and manipulating you emotionally and mentally, and we're not going to stand for it. So we would make comments in our live. They got in a huge fight one night, and she went to his van outside, and went live for, I think it was over an hour, just crying. They had officially broken up, and she needed her space. She wanted to feel safe. She messaged me and was like, yeah, I'm going to sleep in here. Then she gets quiet for a long time, and I think it was literally the next day they're live again and everything's good, but we're broken up. It was confusing, but she's messaging me talking about that she's packing, and I'm like, good, like we can arrange a ride. We always wanted to make it super clear to her that we were going to do whatever we could to get her out of that situation, right? Like because she's already in a place where she doesn't know anybody down there, you know.
Right.
We'll figure it out. And one of our very good friends who lives down in that area, you know, got in touch with that person who's like, yep, I'll go pick her up whenever she's needed. And then I started getting like, well, I need to give him a few more days. I'm afraid he's going to do something to himself. It was always like, you know.
Yeah.
So that the back and forth was frustrating. But that night, she told me that the night before when she was out in the van, that he came out, hit her with a flashlight, and dragged her out of the van physically.
Oh my God.
And so, and she was very upset about it.
Yeah.
She didn't tell us until at this point, I think the boys were both sleeping, right? When she was describing all that. She had not told us because she knew that we were some people to go to for help, but also like to keep some information from us because we were those people that would do what we had to do.
Yeah.
You know, Brandon would pick up the phone, Chris would pick up the phone. At this point, I hadn't made any calls. I hadn't been in that situation where I was like, okay, let's go. She needs our help. So she's telling me about that and that she, like, this is it. Like, I'm actually gonna, like, go. The door's locked. She's telling me without really telling me that some things had repeatedly happened to her that were bad, that she was not letting us know about. There are things that she could not tell us about that were happening to her, had happened to her. And then she says the TV just went off, which we've had this conversation before. It happens all the time because she'd sleep in the bedroom, lock the door, and he'd sleep out in the chair. When the TV goes off, it means he's coming to the door. So she sends me a voice clip of just quietness, and I'm like, I can't hear anything. She's like, he's standing outside the door just breathing. A few minutes go by and I get another recording, and it's him banging on the door, which we've had these before, but now I know physical violence has happened to her, not only in pictures and not only in rough, intimate moments, but non-consensual and being hit and drugged out of a van. So the voice clip she sends me is him banging on the door. Let me in, I need to talk to you. My head's not right. I need you to help me. And that's the last thing I get. And like 30 minutes go by, and the whole time I'm waiting for her to respond back. Because of course I reply like, you know, don't let him in.
Yeah.
She had his gun hidden, and in that moment, I thought, okay, if something happens and I need to contact the police, I need to know where that is. So I asked her, I said, tell me where you hid it and then delete the message right away so that I know, so that I can tell the police if they ask if there's any firearms. So I got that information from her earlier. But again, this voice clip was the last thing she sent. And the whole time I'm just like, something doesn't feel right. I messaged the boys. She usually replies like promptly. She usually doesn't let him in until much later, you know, in the night when we stop talking. At that point, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to do it. Welfare check. I called 911. I tell them the information. I told them about what had happened the night previously, about her being hit and dragged out of the van with a flashlight. I literally read the conversation of like her saying that she was in fear for her life. And they're like, all right, we're gonna get her soon, messaging her still. And finally I say, Shay, I called the police. I'm so sorry. I didn't know what else to do. I'm worried about you. And she finally responds and said, yeah, they're here. I want to say it was like an hour goes by, and then I get a phone call from her and she's sobbing, and she said they're arresting him and this police officer needs some information from you. And it was just like, you know, my phone number and stuff like that. And she said, I'll call you after they arrest him. And I'm thinking, okay, are they arresting him from the DV the night before? And then she basically breaks down and said, he's going to jail for DV. Thank you for saving my life. And it wasn't until later that day, because this was like 3 a.m, wasn't until later that day that we found out that the charges had been upgraded to and second-degree attempted murder. And that's when we were like, holy shit, something big must have gone down, you know?
Were you gonna say something, Brandon?
I would just say 2 counts.
Oh, yeah,
yes.
2 counts of it.
Second-degree attempted murder. I also want to say something. We talked briefly about these voice clips, and I know Boston talked about them a lot, but I want to emphasize that it wasn't just a few. It wasn't a dozen. I mean, I would say it was close to, almost, if not 3-digit number of voice clips, but right there on it. I mean, there were a ton.
Just from that night, or like all together?
Just all together as a
Okay.
whole. I
Every
mean,
day.
Yeah.
it was like Boston said, it was daily that we were getting voice clips.
It was definitely in the 3 digits.
That's
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as far as, like, I keep forgetting the order of things, but yeah, like, we had known at this point, before I made the phone call, that she had been non-consensually passing out, having seizures, and sometimes she would explain to us that it was consensual,
Yeah.
and it was
A
part of-
BDSM thing.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
part of sexy time,
Yeah.
But then she would tell us about this time when they were just sitting on the porch, or just she was sitting on a chair and he would just choke her out until she passed out and had a seizure. And we're like, that's not like
That's not normal, and that's
No.
not okay. Yeah.
right.
Well, it's like what we were saying earlier, like just talking about like the haunts and stuff, how he would progressively just get worse and worse. And it just seems like that's what's happening in his personal relationships too. It's like, what's going to happen with the next one,
100%.
He has no limiter, right? Like he goes to an extreme, and it always has to be more than that. There's no stopping. It always just has to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and push that envelope so far until things go way too far. And we've been lucky so far. I mean, unfortunately, how many people have been extremely hurt? Nobody has died yet. But
Yeah.
I mean, everyone keeps saying like, oh, it's only a matter of time, but it's like, no, like actually though, that like if this time it was a attempted murder, what's the next extreme after that? It's like, that's terrifying. Well, obviously Shay is so lucky to have you guys. Like, holy shit. I can't even imagine. And it was really hard. Like, I was watching through some of her lives and stuff, like, after the fact, and her saying, like, I still love Russ, and I still, and I don't want him to go to jail. And, like, obviously she's a victim of abuse, and I think that's a really common, like, mindset for these victims to have. But, like, it is so heartbreaking, and she's so young, and it's, like, to go through something like that at her age, and it's, like, so stick with her for life, dude.
Yeah. Sadly, she's been through a lot in her short life, sadly.
Yeah.
And this is just, I'm glad that we all came together. I'm glad that she had a safety net and a support system. And yeah, it's a very weird friendship, the way it all turned out. We obviously are anti her boyfriend, doing everything we can, to take him down. That was a huge issue too, because he eventually found out that we were talking, and he would want her to say things about Chris or Brandon, like on her public lives, and she wouldn't.
Yeah.
He would want her to take them down, and then we get voice clips afterwards of him screaming at her, like, why didn't you go after them? And she's trying to say, like, listen, and that's the thing. If you're a mod, even if you're in his Facebook group, but if you're one of his moderators on his Facebook group, or you're a friend, or especially if you're a girlfriend, you have to be going after these haters. You have to come at us.
If you're not with me, you're against me.
Yeah, you will be disposed of. You won't be important anymore to him or useful, right? And you hear that in the documentary. Gabby, I think, brings it up. And Chris, I don't know what's going on with your mic. Are you saying things?
no.
Oh, okay.
You just looked like you were like
his mouth kept moving, and I'm like, but I don't see. Yeah, stop doing the mouth.
Stop doing the mouth thing. So, I mean, as far as you know, is obviously the charges got dropped and shit, and so that means that the order of protection is dropped too. Has he contacted her? Is she still in his grasp? Is she okay? Like,
we're still friends with her. Right?
Yeah.
And we do our best to guide her. What do you want to say on that, Chris?
You don't have to, I mean, if it's too much, you don't have to go into it.
I'll say this. I think it's better that she's been out of the situation for as long as she has, and I hope she makes the right decision going forward.
That's good. I
Mhm.
mean, at least there's that. Man.
Well, and if we want to rewind a little bit, just to like touch on the charges being dropped, she explains that really well. And I don't know if you're going to use some of
Yeah,
her
'cause
clips
I
or
know
whatever, but
she was making it sound like she didn't say no enough, and so that's why they like didn't move forward or something. Like she said no at first, but then she stopped saying no.
I'll tell you what the big thing was. I think we talked about it too on with her when
Yeah.
we interviewed her, but basically when she got out of the hospital and her family got her and drove her back or out of state to go live with them,
Mhm.
and when he got released from jail, he immediately had that no contact order. What he does and what he's always done, and Chris can attest to this, is he has other people do things for him. She was being contacted by women who were in his Facebook group and some of his close friends. And she was sharing their conversations that they were having with her with us.
Yeah.
These were women saying, Russ would never hurt you. If he did that, it was because he was just, you guys got in a fight and you just wanted, that's how he makes up.
Mhm.
He would never intentionally hurt you. Other people saying things like, he's going to die in prison. He's going to be killed. Or he's
Yeah.
going to off himself.
Yeah.
And she is reading these things, sharing them with us.
Yeah.
We're freaking out and saying block, block, block.
Right.
And she's thinking, I love this man. He couldn't have meant to hurt me. I'd rather hear
Yeah.
what these women are saying than
Yeah.
what my friends here are saying, you know?
Right. Yeah.
She got extremely manipulated to the point where we had to step back and take a little break because we were getting angry and we didn't want to take that out on her.
Right.
We
Yeah.
understood the abusive cycles, I think,
Mhm.
to the point at least where we knew like this is normal, it's going to take time. We got to support her, but constantly hearing and seeing these people actively manipulating her saying, I miss him, I want to talk to him.
Defending the indefensible. Like, I don't, what kind of morally corrupt person do you have to be to like do that, to message someone who's going through that? Like,
Well, these people are also like, and not to give them
Yeah,
excuses,
yeah, yeah.
but these people are also being manipulated
Oh.
by the master manipulator. Chris can share a story in a second if he wants to, but long story short, she was asked by Russ through a third party to make videos of her stating what happened and making sure to make it a point that she was downplaying it, essentially. And she did that. They also wanted her in the videos to accuse us of doing something bad or trying to set him up. And she refused to do that. She appreciates us, our friendship, and, where we came in, but the other part of her still loving him. So at that time, when she's still going through that, she made that video. He held on to that video. She went through the motions, had a wake-up call, realized what had happened, that she,
yeah.
dealt with her trauma. We all came back together to support her as we saw that change kind of happening and just saying, sorry, we had to step back and take a break for our own mental health. This has been a lot. We just are so glad you're safe and have kind of come to this awakening. And then she got asked to come to court and started sharing with us the things that she had done, like the mistakes she had made and that's her big thing now, is she wants like victims to know, if you're in that mindset when you first get out, don't do that.
Yeah.
Don't contact the person. Don't give them anything they can use against you.
Yeah.
In my opinion, that video she made is why the charges got dropped.
Probably. That would make sense. I mean, that's very unfortunate. So, damn.
Do you want to share that story, Chris?
You don't have to if you don't want to.
I mean, I can. I've said it 100 times.
Oh, okay.
Basically, what Russ does with his close friends, like it happened with me, his exes, when they wouldn't talk to him, didn't want to talk to him anymore. He was showing me that he sent, 60-some messages, and he showed me things out of context that didn't make him look as crazy, even though there was like 60 of them.
Of course.
But he would tell me that, I'm at my limit. This was the only one for me, and I'm going to off myself. Maybe you could help me so that I don't. But if you don't help me, then I'm going to do it.
Oh my God.
Now it was on me. And a few times, I did it to appease them. And then
Yeah.
after a while, it was like I started seeing that manipulation. I gave pushback. I said, no. I said, oh, how about I just call the cops if you're threatening to kill yourself?
Right.
He said, well, then just know that by the time the cops pull up, I'm going to blow my brains out. And that blood is on your hands.
That is so gross.
So I'm not the first one in talking to other people who were in my position since, especially recently. I found out that this was a common thing.
Yeah.
And it wasn't not only to friends, but then also the women that were in relationships with him.
His daughter. And then she also said that he did it to my mom too. So yeah, it's clearly a pattern of behavior with Russ. But obviously no one wants him to blow his brains out. But it's just like,
it's a way he controls people.
Right. But at what point does that stop working? It's like a boy who cried wolf kind of thing. And it's like, when that stops working, then what does he have,
Yeah, it just find a new group of people.
True. Yeah. New people to
He does. He recycles.
And so one thing that I do really want to point out, our goal when we started McKamey Manor Road Trip was we were prepared that the law would, do the justice that was needed. And the investigation's still going. It's still up in the air. After this last court trial, are we a little more, yay, we think it's going to happen? Probably not. Our mission was Russ lived by that legend. He is a legend, and the stuff that he grew with is a legend. Every year on Halloween, you see all these clickbait ads of all, scariest haunted house, blah, blah, blah. Our goal was to take that legend from him, because without that legend, he loses the following, and he's just a nobody. And guess what? This year, I have yet to see one of those clickbait ads. The ads that I see now is owner of the most extreme haunted house arrested for attempted murder. It's not the good publicity anymore, and his legend, and to me, that is a win. And now he has nothing.
He's got nothing.
Nobody coming to see him. He has a Facebook group that's closed. He's been outed by showing his true colors and the kind of person he really is. And now he's alone in the woods, in the backwoods of Tennessee. And I'm happy.
Hey, he's got dogs. Don't forget about the dogs.
You brought it up earlier, but again, he has not put on a show or quote unquote tour, like he likes to call them, in over a year.
Yeah.
Well over a year. That in and of itself can also be a win.
Yeah.
Right. But like what Chris said, the biggest thing and one of the most influential things is tearing down that legend. And like Chris said, that happened.
And I was watching through some of his lives from like early 2024, early this year, where he kept being like, there's going to be a new Manor tour on Saturday. And then he'd come back and be like, oh, they dropped out. It's like, so I'm wondering like, what the hell happened with that? Were they more trolls, I guess it doesn't matter, because now that doubt is always going to be in his mind thanks to Ben. So like,
exactly.
He's really had things being thrown at him from every angle possible, where now nothing is certain for him anymore. And that is wonderful.
It's honestly, it's the best case scenario, whether the law, like Chris said, whether some kind of legal accountability actually ends up happening or not. I think a huge part of the general mission from all sides has been accomplished. And I hope my hope is that gives some level of peace to any of his victims from the past, whether it be personal relationship victims or victims that went through McKamey Manor and things were taken too far. So I'm happy with that. I do want to point out that some of his mods at the time, his moderators and friends and the people that he can't do anything on his own. I don't know if people know that, by the way, but he needs people to do everything for him. And so these moderators become his, I don't know, unpaid workers or
like slaves.
Yeah. And I will say that I think some of them that have walked away, right, and who have seen the light, we've heard stories from them about before they left, they were sticking around, but they were kind of making sure tours weren't happening, if you catch my drift. I think that some moderators of his that have left, they need to get that credit, because they had that wake-up call before they fully left, they were realizing, all right, let's not have a hand in helping this lie anymore.
There are a lot of hands working this whole thing for the past however many years it's been. I mean, it's about time people finally see something happen. So, yeah.
Right. And have you ever seen any, that's another good question. Have you ever seen any of his friends or girlfriends leave and just be like, yeah, he's a good guy.
Well, what about that Haley girl?
Like, there's always somebody. Oh.
Because she, I mean, as far as I know,
she kind of,
kind of did that. Like, she got married. I was looking at her Facebook today. There's a picture of her in a wedding dress on her profile picture. So it's like, at least she's not with Russ anymore. But I do remember when I was researching last year, her shit was all over his Facebook group.
She came down a few times, right? And she was like a mod, but she was more of the girlfriend from the distance.
Yeah.
Because she came in the middle of when Susan and him were going back and forth. So she was only kind of briefly in person. And I think that's why we didn't see these big reactions out of her as the other ones. And that was because, I think she went down. And when she went down, it was usually with a group of people.
Right.
Yeah.
Alone time.
I do remember there was that one live where Russ was like in clown face paint or something, and I think it was just the two of them. But all the other ones but all the other ones I remember seeing were all just like her, or like a group of people, like you were saying. Maybe it was just because there was way more distance between, if they never lived together or anything like that. Like there was never really an opportunity for shit to really go wrong. Because even after, that's what it was. Because when I was researching last year, I remember she was all over the Facebook group and she was making it like Russ was using her phone to go live in the Facebook group and stuff like that. But if you went to her profile, she had pictures with another dude. And so I'm like, well, obviously, she had been with Russ for a while, or at least a few tours or however long it was. But clearly she's moved on now. But she was still in the Facebook group. So like that seemed like there was some kind of amicable split, I guess, but that's the only one I know of that she didn't come out afterwards and have this huge expose or whatever.
Yeah, I think she stayed quiet.
You think he stayed quiet?
She stayed.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Well, maybe she just didn't have as much to complain about either.
So we have to keep in mind, too, that there are women who, they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to come forward.
Right.
I'm talking whole ass relationships that no one knows about.
Oh, probably. Yeah. I can imagine.
Yeah. People who have felt comfortable coming to us more than one. So yeah, I mean, and they're stories that we will never, ever, ever share. And it's totally up to them if they ever want to share them. But it's just even more, what's the word? More gas. It gives us more gas. Because sometimes I'm like, is any of this worth it? And then I think about the people that haven't come forward, and some of the stories that we have heard from these people are absolutely atrocious.
Yeah.
And
it's more encouragement to keep you guys going and talking about it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really like unfortunate gas to be keeping you going, but I mean, it's something. And unfortunately, like even especially if Shay, doesn't go back and they don't try to pick things up again, like there's just going to be another one. So
what I was gonna say was the hope, I think, when Susan came out with her story, right? And I'm sure the same with Holly and the same with Carol, but coming out with those stories publicly, the hope is this is so that nothing has happened legally to this person, to protect people. This is a warning to people about who this man really is, and hopefully that stops the relationships.
Yeah.
And sadly, it didn't happen. And now it's almost like Groundhog's Day. We're in the same situation where Shay wanted her story out there because, and she really wanted justice. She wanted her story out there. She wanted some accountability to happen. So broken that the law side of things didn't come into play.
Yeah.
But she really wanted to make sure that her story got out there so hopefully there wasn't anyone else that was going to have to go through this. And now sadly we have to wait and see if it did make an impact. We do have more eyes than we did. The story has gone mainstream in a lot of senses, so hopefully it does make an impact, whereas the other one sadly didn't.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of bigger like channels are picking it up too. Like I saw it was shared in your guys' group last chapter. I think I watched their his true crime shit all the time. And so I see Russ pop up and I'm like, oh shit. So it's like it is nice, like even if it's not, obviously Hulu was pretty mainstream, but like even if like just the bigger channels with like millions of subscribers pick it up, like that's a lot of great exposure too. So it's good to see that happening too.
And Chris was talking about the clickbait earlier and how that happens every year, and how this year it's been like really good to see that people click on it, but then there's like, here's the truth, and it's not all this exciting crazy haunt where you could win $20,000. Everybody should try. I could do that. I could beat that. I have to say, when I first found you last year, I was thrilled because you had done such great research. And I remember I shared the video with the boys, or maybe they shared it with me. But when we first found you, I was like, damn. Like there may have been one or two things that you didn't know for sure that we had more inside info about. But like you rocked it, and you gave the correct information that would keep people from going. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
I'm glad I came out with it when I did, because like even like the year before and stuff, I was like, oh, I should make a update to McKamey Manor, but like I knew that there was so much shit involved in it, and I'm like, I don't know, if maybe it's not the right time to dive into it or whatever. But like, and then when Ben started going through it, I started getting suggested his videos, and I'm like, fuck it, clearly things are happening, so like let's dive into it. And props go to Ben for that too. I mean, Ben really got the ball rolling in a lot of ways too. So yeah, he's a rock star. You're all rock stars. Y'all did great. You're doing great.
Same to you. I think the universe just kind of aligned and like called everybody last year. Attorney General, Hulu, you, Ben and Danny.
I didn't even know that the Hulu documentary was coming out when I started researching it, and then like towards the end, then I started like seeing shit about it. I was like, oh fuck. All right, well, this is gonna be good timing. All right, I can't imagine that Ben knew about it. Did he? Or
you know what? He was filming the first episode when he met me. Because remember when I told you it was like having a fucking fever dream? It was a weird fucking phone call. He called me at like 3 a.m.
What the
and in the middle of it, like while he's talking to me, I hear this screaming and a bunch of glass crack, and then I see a pig
running around.
And he's like, there's a pig, and it's knocking over everything. And then he's chasing it, and then Lydia's taking me around the apartment. I'm just seeing pictures of Ben hung up.
Of Ben everywhere.
Like, who are you people?
And I was like,
well, we had been watching him.
Yeah.
We've been watching his Yellow Deli series. Yellow Deli series.
We saw him go through MM and his videos about MM
in real time.
We were looking into, because at this point we were stopping people from going through.
Yeah.
And so he was one that showed on our radar of somebody
like,
trying to stop.
I know that boy.
Yeah, we were like, wait a second.
Yeah.
This is something going down.
Yeah.
Wait a second. Right.
It sounds like it was just like the stars aligning, like you said. It was less of Ben knew that shit was about to go down with Hulu, and then now's a good time. It just kind of happened.
Stars aligned.
Yeah. Wow.
It was great because Chris is like,
aligned and said, let's fuck up Russ McKamey this year.
Y'all did the damn thing too. I'll tell you what.
Well, and I'm a Libra, and it's my villain era.
Hell yeah, bitch.
So I think I have like maybe half a year left of being in this villain era, but it did start.
I didn't know villain eras were a thing. Like, when the fuck is mine? I'm ready for
TikTok
it.
astrologist told me.
Oh,
they were like,
those
Libras,
people are really trustworthy.
They are. There was one TikTok when this guy was like, Libra, you are about to be a menace for the next year and a half. And that was like right when all this was starting last year. So
okay, so it was more than just the stars aligning, the planets aligned too, bitch.
The planets aligned, and that is why my villain came out when I gave Russ the finger at Transworld.
It was in the stars for you.
It explains everything. This whole thing is very astrological.
Dude, what a weird circumstance, but it's great. All of it's great. Well, We've been talking for 2 hours, so
Yeah.
I'll let you guys go. I know it's like, wait, it's only 7 where I'm at, but obviously it's later for you guys, so.
I'm a night owl, but I'm looking at these two, especially Brandon, like, oh
Yeah,
my
Brandon,
Lord.
you look like you're sleepy. Thank you for
Yes.
agreeing to talk to me, damn.
All right, guys. Well, hey, if you made it this far in the video, I appreciate you. I just really quick, as always, want to extend some thanks to people. Of course, obviously, I have to thank Chris and Boston and Brandon for talking to me, for taking 2 hours out of their time to chat with me about a bunch of BS. They're really great people, so I do hope you go subscribe to them. Their link is going to be down in the description below. And now I just want to thank my patrons and my members, guys. The list of names I'm about to read off are my financial supporters. They get access to things like our private Discord server. We have a postcard club, and sometimes there's even more than that. So, Pippi, I got kitty. Someone commented on the last video and was like, oh, that's a real cat. Yeah. She's my permanent lab kitty. She basically lives here. Anyway, patreon.com/Savannah Marie, or you can click the join button beneath this video to join my YouTube memberships. Just whatever works for you, works for me. And with that, the biggest thank you in the whole wide world goes to Hula Chowdown, Jacqueline Nutton, Kessie Drew, KJ Barnes, Leanne, Caroline Reed, Daniel Urena, Maddie Darley, Ray, Stephanie Mayfield, Ferd Turgeson Esquire, AJC, Love to Be Evil, Just Mark, Amber Price, Baby Pink Pearl, Alice Wagner, LaSalle Story, Fallon Harris, Hannah, Jessica Billhart, and Emion. And to the rest of my financial supporters, thank you so much for being here and being you. And even if you're not a financial supporter, I appreciate that you sat through that whole interview. I thought it was interesting, so I hope you guys liked it too. Everybody have a wonderful and safe Halloween. I haven't picked a topic for my next deep dive yet, so if you're here and you have any ideas of what you'd like to see me cover next, go ahead and let me know. I mean, I have some ideas, but like, yeah, let me know what you want to see me cover. As soon as I have that video done, I'll be seeing you again. So take care. Bye.
Who's that girl?